Welcome to Lynchian Picks on Coffee Next Movie Picks, a members-only collection venturing into the dreamlike world of David Lynch films and black, damn fine coffee. You are listening to episode 2 of 10 for Lynchian Picks, covering The Elephant Man, a true story adapted by Lynch about courage and human dignity. Our black coffee pairing for this discussion is the Tigrato Espresso Blend from Tarẽsso Artisan Coffee Roasters in Greece. Please take a seat, stay a while, and let's talk David Lynch over some black coffee. Oh my goodness, hello everyone. How are we all doing out there? Huh? Right. First of all, I think I'm going to say this every single time, but if you are listening to this, thank you so much for joining the coffee house. I am really excited about this project, and I expressed some doubts earlier on, but with how I'm feeling now towards it, I'm really excited because it's kind of like research. The way I'll get to kind of like just dive deep into these different topics. I just get to like learn more, even with things that I thought I knew a lot about to begin with, like David Lynch. I'll just get to learn some new things, and I hope that listening to this, you will be able to as well. For those of you who are just joining us, welcome. So glad you're here. There are 2 episodes that were released in this collection prior to this. You do not have to listen to this in order, but the very first episode was kind of like a trailer. In that episode, I talk about who is David Lynch, what I hope to do with the Lynchian Picks series, and my personal relationship with David Lynch's work. So that one might be helpful to listen to if you're looking to get into this series. And then the first official episode of the series was covering Eraserhead, which was a really fun discussion and of course a great way to start off this collection. So go and listen to those if you would like to. It's fine if not. You can just start with this one. That is a-okay. But yes, thank you for being here. I've been doing good. Work has been busy. I feel like I only have time, not even on weekends for this podcast. It's kind of like weeknights. I'm kind of just cranking this out, watching movies, writing the scripts, and then recording the episodes. It's like a 4-day process where I'm just kind of doing this and leading up to the release on Thursday or Friday. It's kind of nonstop, to be honest. But like I said, I do have a great time doing it, and I get to just talk about movies and write about it, which that's the name of the game, isn't it? Some exciting things coming up on the main show, and since you're here at the coffee house, I thought I would give you a little sneak peek. But on the main show, Coffee Next Movie Picks, we have our next mainline episode is going to be covering Wake in Fright, which is an Australian horror film from the 1970s. And I'll be joined by special guest Jared, who is a relative of mine that lives in Australia and is an Australian local resident, so he's a professional on the topic, and we just recorded that one, and that one is such a fun discussion, and I really cannot wait to share it. And then coming up, we do have some Pride Month episodes coming soon. I'm hoping to do one on But I'm a Cheerleader and then one on Brokeback Mountain. Kind of give you the 2 flavors of Pride Month, I guess. And hopefully there will be special guests on both of those, but I have not even organized those yet, so I need to get going. And then, of course, you know what's coming on the Lynchian Picks, so no surprises there, but lots of exciting things coming up. I also plan on doing some bonus episodes throughout June just because I have a lot to say. And I went to New York and I saw Beyonce's Cowboy Carter tour, and I would like to talk about that so bad. But I think I need to save it for the main show. I think I need to save it. I don't know. I want to make sure everyone hears what I have to say about that show. So just know that I had a life-changing experience, to say the least, and I feel rejuvenated and alive. Something about good art pours back into my glass. I'm a huge fan of this glass analogy. How, people either like pour into your glass or they take from your glass, or like if your glass is empty, you need to find a way to pour into it, or if it's over full, like you need to pour into someone else's. Huge fan of that analogy. I seem to have like a bottomless glass because that bitch is never full. Anyways, but it is because I was leaving this Cowboy Carter show and my glass felt more full than it ever has been before, creatively speaking. I feel like creatively and just like inspiration wise, the well has run dry. And I think that ever since like the election, I've felt pretty hopeless and not very proud or inspired with just the current events that are going on. But the way that I'm just getting into this now, who gives a fuck? I'll talk about it again. I don't care. The way that Beyonce sort of reframes America and points out these different aspects that, we're not paying attention to, or I'm not paying attention to before. The way that she reframes America and, she's criticizing the way it is now, but pointing out the way forward with her music and with this performance. And she's giving reasons to be proud to be an American. It is like quite moving and quite powerful. It was good. It was a good show. I will leave it at that. And I also had a fun time in New York because I went to the New York show. So great time. Let's get into the main events, shall we? Okay, so this first segment is Now Brewing. This is a segment reviewing coffee as black as midnight on a moonless night. Today's Now Brewing is a Tigrato Espresso Blend from Tarẽsso Artisan Coffee Roasters. This is straight from Greece. It just got back from Greece. Do you guys know that TikTok girl who's like, get ready with me to go to Greece? I'm packing my bag to go to Greece. She's the one who's also like, my makeup bag. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? I don't know. This coffee, the Tigrato, is straight from Greece. Thank you so much to my dear, cherished friend, Jonah Peters, for getting me this coffee. When someone buys you a bag of coffee, just like a 1 pound bag of coffee beans, that is like teaching a man to fish. If someone buys you a coffee at a coffee shop, that's nice, but that's simply giving someone a fish. When you give a man, a Nick, a bag of coffee, you're teaching him to fish. This bag of coffee, it gave me life for over a month. So Jonah really supplied me with quite a bit of coffee from an international destination that I don't often make it out to, and I never have before, and possibly never will. So I have to express my sincerest gratitude for Jonah Peters in giving me this coffee experience. Thank you, Jonah. It is very appreciated. Because this is also straight from Greece, I might be saying the name wrong for both the blend and the roaster that this is from. So if they're listening, please forgive me and feel free to correct me in whatever way you see fit. Maybe politely, please. How did I brew it? So this is the fun part about talking about. I mean, it's fun for me. You all might not give a fuck, and that's okay. But this is the coffee house. It's fun. This is the fun part about talking about bags of coffee, is that I can brew it in whatever way I want. And because this was an espresso blend, I didn't really have a good way to brew it. I really just have like a pour over at my house. I just rely on that. I love a pour over, but obviously that is not good for an espresso blend. So I was trying to think of like what other brewing methods could I use? And when I found out I had to basically buy something to brew espresso if I wanted to do it correctly, I explored my options. I was thinking about an AeroPress and I was thinking about a mocha pot. And I received a good recommendation for a mocha pot and I used that. And it's been a few months that I've had my mocha pot now, and I've been having a lovely time with it. So for those of you who do not know, a mocha pot is basically like this metal kettle. Metal kettle. It's almost like a steam kettle. Is that what it's called? The ones that whistle? Tea kettle. Yeah, it's almost like a tea kettle, but it's very tiny. Mine is tiny, and it makes espresso. Pretty sure you can get one that makes larger batches of regular coffee. So what you do is there's like three parts almost. There's this one on the bottom that holds the water, and then there is your grinds. You pack that in, and then you screw on this top part. So and you put it on the stove on low heat, and the water heats up and it goes up through the grinds and spouts out the top into the container part. And then it makes this cute little like gurgling noise when it's done, and you have yourself a really good espresso. And it still has like that foam and everything. It's like a thick sort of consistency. Obviously, when I say that, it's still liquid, obviously, but you can you feel like this thicker taste. It's really good. For those of you who are interested in getting a mocha pot, they recommend that you grind your coffee beans a little bit coarser than what you usually would for an espresso blend. So like, just like the next setting up. And then they also recommend that you put in water that is already somewhat heated into the bottom part. You do it over low heat, like I said. And then when it starts gurgling, you want to take it off the stove as soon as possible and run the bottom part under cold water. I can't quite tell you why any of those things are the way they are, why they make sense, but that's just how it is. And I've been making some really good espresso with it lately, so I think the YouTube video I watched on it did me right. So, how did the espresso taste though? So the Tigrato, I just said that in like the worst way you could have. The Tigrato espresso blend, the Tiger Espresso Blend. I'll just say that. Um, I'm so sorry to these coffee roasters. I really liked it. This was really, really good. And I think this kind of spoiled me for espresso. I went to like a few chain coffee places and I was just like, this tastes terrible. And it's because I was like used to making this at home, I think. But like I said, this was just delicious espresso. It was really rich. And it was kind of like a lighter espresso taste. Usually when you think of espresso, you think of like a almost kind of burned taste or very bold. But I think that this was kind of like more on the lighter, more flavorful side of espresso, which I really liked. The taste was very sweet. It has, to me, a very lemony citrus taste and notes of vanilla. I know the website I looked at described it as kind of just a fruity, sweet taste, but I really got like that vanilla and that lemon. So a little bit about these coffee roasters, Tarẽsso Artisan Coffee Roasters, again, might be saying the name wrong. They are one of the leading specialty coffee companies in Greece, which is really cool. And they set the expectation to inspire their customers and introduce them to specialty coffee. Love that mission. Yeah, I could get into that, but I think you all know how I feel. I think that it is great to use coffee to uplift people and to make specialty coffee accessible. It's one thing to be a snob, like that's fine, but we have to let people in. So if by doing that we need to use more, kind of just average language when talking about coffee, then that's what we're going to do. So I think that is a great mission to have. They state that the company operates with a state-of-the-art production facility in Corinth, storage and office facilities in Athens, and through a large network of agents. So they are very much Greek. They do not seem to outsource that many things. And they also focus on providing quality brewing products. So not only do they introduce their customers to specialty coffee, but they introduce them to ways to make that coffee. So they have the whole picture sorted out here, which is really cool. And you all know that I love to go to just like the About Us page and directly read what it says. So this is what it says. Quote, "The history of coffee began in Ethiopia, where coffee arabica grew as a bush. Initially, the fruit was used whole by the local populations, who either chewed it or ground it into small lumps. The earliest reliable reference to coffee consumption or knowledge of coffee trees appears in the mid-15th century in the Sufi monasteries of Yemen. The origin of coffee and the discovery of its properties also gave rise to several myths. The most important is known as the legend of the dancing goat and attributes the discovery of the properties of coffee to an Ethiopian shepherd. Kaldi noticed that when his animals ate the fruits of the coffee plant during the day, they became more active, while at night they had difficulty to sleep." End quote. I love this shit. I love like stuff like this on the website. But I think that's so cool. I've talked about Ethiopian coffee and how the history of coffee is like very much linked to Ethiopia on this podcast before, or at least the mainline podcast. But I'm very glad that this coffee place directly states that history here. I think that the history of coffee is something that is incredibly interesting. And I just love like little myths like this one. I think that's really cute. So I just love that they had that there. And the rest of the About Us page and many other things on this website are in Greek. So I'm really not too sure about anything else about this place. Yeah, so if anyone knows Greek, please let me know. I tried putting it into Google Translate, but it said it couldn't do it. So that's fine. But some of their website was in English, so they wanted me to see some of it, I guess. But yeah, this espresso blend, the Tigrato Tiger, it was really, really good. If you are ever in the neighborhood, ever in Greece, or if you're friends with Jonah Peters and he takes a little adventure off into Greece, definitely get a bag of this one. It was quite good. I'm going to give the Tigrato Espresso Blend from Tarẽsso Artisan Coffee Roasters the Nick pick. I've been doing a lot of Nick picks recently, and I've just been having good coffee, so I'm not sorry about that. I think I had an era where I was being overly negative, so I think I'm just making up for that right now, and it's healthy to be positive. So if you're complaining about me giving everything a Nick pick, shut up. Okay. The coffee thought. This, of course, is an outlet dedicated to voice my many incoherent thoughts over some coffee. Don't have coffee right now, but drinking some water. Let's see. What do I want to talk about today? I think what I want to talk about is straw opening etiquette. Now, I know that straws that you use for drinks in and of themselves are quite controversial because, yes, let us please minimize the amount of plastic things we are using. I often think about that. Like when I look at the grocery store, it feels like an impossible task sometimes to be a responsible consumer and to not purchase things that have single-use plastics holding them or somehow containing them, you know? It's really hard to do that, to be a papertarian, as that one commercial says. I think about that commercial a lot. It's really hard to be a papertarian sometimes in this world. So yes, let us please minimize the amount of plastic we use. But if we're gonna use straws, a lot of people use straws. I like the ones Look, I get the drama with paper straws. I really do. I really like the ones that are like, oh, this is a plant-based straw made of some weird material, but like if you didn't read the wrapper, you just think it's plastic. I like those ones. Um, okay, putting the whole straw discussion aside, we can come back to that if we need to. Opening a straw, getting a straw out of a wrapper. How do you do it? How do you do it? Think about it. You are at a coffee shop and you're kind of at that little condiment bar. You grab a straw. What's your next move? Because I'm watching you and I'm judging you based on what your next move is. What are you going to do? Think about it. Think about it. If your answer is you are going to grab that straw like it's your dying breath and you're going to lift it in the air and then slam it to the countertop repeatedly. Boom, 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 boom. To try to unwrap it. You're going to slam it. If that is your answer, I don't we need to take a break. We need to take a break. At least let's take some time apart and we'll come back together and talk. I need to know why that is like the a lot of people do it. I shouldn't be so harsh because a lot of people do this. I'm confused how that is the easiest option, especially with so many of these straws being so cheap. They break so easily. I could just like kind of, a cute little bite on one and that thing cracks down the middle and all of a sudden when I take a sip, I'm getting half the drink I was getting. So I just don't understand how banging it on the countertop to open the straw from the wrapper, I don't understand how that is the productive or efficient choice. You know, what I do, most straw wrappers, they come wrapped and they have that little seam along. I grab the seam and I split it open. And it unwraps, so there's like the end of the straw sticking out, and I just pull it out of the rest of the wrapper, put it in my drink. It's quiet, it's not violent, the straw doesn't break. You're not alarming people around you. You don't look like I don't know, like you just took a line in the bathroom and like you're on a rush and like you need to like punch a hole in the drywall. You don't look like that. So that's a plus. You just see how I open my straw. It's very cutesy. It's very gentle. And I just gently, I take it out of the wrapper and I put it in my Coke, my Coca-Cola, which I like regular full strength Coca-Cola. I put it in. See how nice that was? Bam, 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 bam. Ah, straw broke. Let me get a new one. Bam, 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 bam. That's my coffee thought right now. That's what I'm thinking about. And I do witness this a lot at coffee shops. Save a straw. Save people's peace of mind. Just, I don't know. Try something more gentle. Maybe it's cathartic and you kind of like get something out of it. It's kind of like one of those it's kind of like one of those trash rooms, or what is it called? Like break rooms where you just go in and try to break everything. Um Maybe it's like that, but like in a very constrained, minimized scale. And okay, so there's a lot to be mad about. There's a lot to be enraged about in the year 2025. Um, Yeah, actually, you know what? Don't let me take this from you. Don't let me take this from you. I'm a big proponent of not stealing people's joy. If this brings you joy, if this brings you, I don't know, stress release in some way, have it. Have it. I've learned something. Okay. I've learned something from this coffee thought. I've had a change of heart, a change of mind. Now showing the Lynchian Picks. This is our film discussion segment diving deep into the dreamlike nightmares of David Lynch. You're listening to part 2 of 10 of Lynchian Picks. This is covering The Elephant Man. A surgeon in Victorian England, Frederick Treves, takes a disfigured man into his care when he witnesses him being mistreated at a sideshow circus. As Frederick begins to get to know the Elephant Man as an actual man named John Merrick, he and the rest of London are enamored and shocked by his sentimental nature. The Elephant Man is adapted by David Lynch, Eric Bergen, and Christopher DeVore, and directed by David Lynch. It stars Anthony Hopkins as Frederick Treve and Sir John Hurt as John Merrick. It was originally released in theaters on October 10th, 1980. The first really interesting thing about this film is that it is David Lynch's first studio and commercial film, and it was a smashing success. I read somewhere when I was doing some light research that this followed closely behind Star Wars Episode 5. I think Episode 5 was the one released this year. Let me check. Yeah. This followed close behind Star Wars Episode 5 in the 1980 box office charts. So that is really impressive for a movie like this. That would not happen in 2025, I imagine. But who knows? Maybe if we get a film as lovely as The Elephant Man, there's potential for that. So this was a smashing success, and this was David Lynch's first studio and commercial film. Before this, it was just Eraserhead, which was obviously an indie film and very niche. This was executive produced by Mel Brooks. He was not listed in the credits because at the time he was widely known for his satirical and comedic work, and he did not want this film to be misinterpreted or people to have expectations set for this to be any sort of satire or comedy. So he just was not listed anywhere. And Mel Brooks was enamored by Eraserhead, which eventually got him to pick up David Lynch as the director for this. And The Elephant Man is loosely based on the true story of Joseph Merrick. So this film, the script, is originally adapted from The Elephant Man and Other Reminiscences, I think is how you say that, by Frederick Treves, who is the main character of this film. And it is also adapted from Ashley Montagu's The Elephant Man, A Study in Human Dignity, which was released in 1971. So both of those true accounts were considered and adapted into this film. More about the film, it received 8 Academy Award nominations. To name a few: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Actor. And the Academy was so heavily critiqued for not recognizing the makeup work of this film that in the following year, the Academy added a category to recognize that from now on. So that's really cool that the makeup category basically came about because of The Elephant Man. Speaking of the makeup, Sir John Hurt, who played John Merrick, his makeup, applying the makeup took 8 hours and taking it off took 2 hours. His working days were from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. So it was such an intense schedule that he was only on set alternating days, which is kind of crazy to think about because obviously John Merrick is in this film a lot. I really can't think of too many scenes that do not have him in it. So it's just really impressive, the work that went into this. And I read a little bit just saying how meticulous it was to exactly match up the makeup from the day before to the next day. I cannot even imagine doing that. And in the film, the makeup is incredibly believable and effective. So they truly did do a good job, and I'm so glad that the Academy, after this film, added a category to recognize the work that makeup artists do. Because, damn, there was a lot of work that went into this. Another little strange fact, at the time that Mel Brooks was kind of putting this film together, David Lynch was working as a roofer, which, I've read up a lot on David Lynch's life. I watched The Art Life, which is a documentary about David Lynch that just kind of goes through his whole life, even before his time pursuing art. And he never talked about being a roofer, as far as I remember. So I read this fact and I was just kind of like, sure, yeah, okay. So I thought that was interesting that after Eraserhead, he was just working as a roofer. It seems kind of like a David Lynch thing to do, I guess. I think he's done like furniture making before, so I guess this isn't too far off, maybe. I don't know much about roofing. More fun facts. I just have a ton of fun facts right now. After the death of the real Joseph Merrick, so John Merrick, his real life name, the real person was Joseph Merrick, molds were taken of his body and are at the London hospital to this day. Some of his organs even were preserved, but unfortunately those were destroyed by Nazis. I really recommend you to Google the molds that were taken of Joseph Merrick's body. It's really interesting to see how basically the real person was adapted to the screen. Some more about the real Joseph Merrick. Reportedly, I don't know what reports we're talking about here. Reportedly, the real Joseph Merrick was not ill-treated by his managers. He was never abducted from the hospital, and he was never abused by the hospital's watchman. The reports say that he lived happily. And that's great. That's great to hear, because obviously all of those things in this film are so horrific and terrible. So I'm really happy to hear that none of those things are actually true. But I do wonder, the real Joseph Merrick was still 19th century. I think it was like late 1800s. And I do wonder, like, okay, so if we're going off of reports from that time, was there anything omitted from those reports? Like, can we really trust those reports completely to tell the entire truth rather than just some truths? So while it is great to hear that the real Joseph Merrick was not treated poorly, I do wonder just how completely accurate that is. A bit about the production of the Elephant Man film. I just pulled this excerpt from IMDb, I think. Yeah. So Mel Brooks recalled that David Lynch was not at all prepared for the cold of the London winter, which is cool to hear that they filmed on location in London, and that David Lynch didn't bring a coat. So Mel Brooks got David Lynch a coat to wear when he was directing this, which I think is funny. And at this time, David Lynch was also eating Bob's Big Boy burgers every single day, which if you're a David Lynch fan, you know that's like a thing. And he was having a hard time adapting to not having Bob's Big Boy burgers every day. And Mel Brooks said, quote, "He's very obsessive compulsive that way, but, he did find a burger joint in London and he ate there every day too." End quote. I don't quite agree with just loosely calling someone obsessive compulsive, but that is what Mel Brooks said. And I do think it's funny that David Lynch just was, really chomping at the bit to find a burger joint and to somehow fill the Big Bob's Big Boy burger shaped hole somehow. So, okay, getting into the film a bit, that's kind of all my exposition beforehand. I think that this is really interesting because I read somewhere that this is regarded as a biopic. And yeah, of course it is. This is a biopic film, but it's just really crazy to think of it that way because we have so many biopics that are coming out these days. I feel like the 2010s and 2020s is just like packed full of biopics about different singers and whatnot. And they have such a negative connotation these days because they all kind of do the same thing and they all feel the same in some way. So I just didn't even think of this as a biopic because I didn't want it to have that negative connotation. But I think that this film is just proof of what a biopic can be, and kind of like the creative lengths that you could take a biopic and the stories that you can tell with a biopic. You know, it doesn't have to all be about pop stars and that, you know, we could actually tell other stories. So, and in creative ways, you know. And it was also really surprising to hear this film regarded as a biopic because obviously that's just like not really something you hear of from Lynch. That's not like a typical David Lynch movie. And don't get me wrong, this is a Lynch film in a lot of ways, but I think that there are just some major things that really separate it from the rest of his filmography, specifically the setting of London. Usually, David Lynch films focus on America, and there is like an American commentary in some way, something that's specific to America or the American dream, small town America especially. So having a David Lynch film set in London, I was watching this and it just felt weird thinking about like him having to work with like British accents and everything. I'm watching in Twin Peaks: The Return right now, that one character with the Cockney accent. So I guess it came back. Anyways, but I do think like a lot of the themes that we see in The Elephant Man, of course, could be translated to something relatable to us and something relatable to a more American audience. I think, you know, that the themes of this film are just universal. This is not obviously not just limited to the people of London. This is something that everyone can tap into, and I'll probably talk about this a bit more, but this is just an incredibly human story. You know, it's about the human condition and like these dark and light sides of humanity. And you know, a lot, just the themes overall of this film felt a little different than Lynch's usual work. It was a lot lighter on the symbols and abstract imagery. You really didn't get as much of that. And there was kind of like a lot more overt Hollywood emotion in this film and more of a straightforward story, which for a biopic makes sense, but for David Lynch, you don't hear of too often. However, with all of these things being said, this is absolutely still a Lynch film in my book, for just a variety of reasons. First of all, right out the gate, we get that classic Lynch wind noise, or as I called it in the Eraserhead episode, the white noise in the background. And much like Eraserhead, there are a lot of mechanical noises as well. The Elephant Man film sort of emphasizes the industrialization of London, and how everything is sort of turning to just like this devotion towards like the unhuman and the mechanical, and almost like this lack of human emotion and this sort of dead feeling that comes with like these huge factories and this unrelenting, unforgiving machinery that, as the film opens up, you know, we're introduced to Frederick, Anthony Hopkins' character. He is, you know, putting someone under the knife. He's performing surgery on someone who was in a accident in a factory. Let me read what he says. He even says, the machine accident, so it obviously very gory and ugly. And the character Frederick says, you can't reason with them being the machines. So yeah, I feel like this message is quite timeless. You know, you can't reason with the machines. There's no really human connection happening. And you're losing some humanity with it. And I think that this is one of the reasons that this film is a classic and it is timeless, because I think time and time again, this is proving to be true, whether it be with like the dawn of the internet or at-home computers or smartphones or what's that thing? A1? Is it called A1? What is it called? AI? That's it. That's it. With AI, you know, could it be that there's some humanity being lost, that you can't reason with it, that I don't know, the machine accident. It can be a little ugly, it can be a little gory. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Are we losing some human empathy, some human emotion by devoting ourselves to these technologies? I don't know. Interesting stuff to think about. Interesting stuff. Should we just sit in silence for a bit? Okay. Of course, other things that make this a bit of a Lynch film is the music and sound design. The sound design, of course, David Lynch had control over. And for this one, he had a lot of control over creating the music as well, which is really cool. There were a few scenes of John Merrick's mother screaming in peril. And this is at the very front of the film, which reminded me a bit of Eraserhead, kind of like a more abstract opening. And then we see it again later, and this is actually juxtaposed with images of a factory. And this time, the mother's screams are slowed and distorted, very a la Fire Walk with Me. I think of Sarah Palmer a bit. Just kind of like this screaming that is so like primal that it's so horrific. It's quite scary. I thought that was a bit of a scary moment in this film, The Elephant Man, of course, in Twin Peaks too. Yeah, let's talk about that scene a little bit as well. If I remember correctly, that was at a very low moment. There's a zoom in of John Merrick's mask that he wears, the cover over his face with the eye hole, and it fades into his mother screaming, which the film says that John Merrick's disfigurements were a result of the mother being trampled by elephants on a safari. So the mask is connecting to this mother screaming. And the mother screaming is then kind of juxtaposed, inlaid, transitions to whatever you want to say, with the men working in the factory. So like there's this loss happening, and then that transitions into a reflection of John Merrick's face. So we're not only seeing John Merrick's face, we're seeing him seeing his own face. And then that turns into images of an elephant, and then images of the person who managed John Merrick at the sideshow circus, him beating John. So there's a lot of stuff happening here. There's kind of just like a lot of symbols that just kind of got ran through. So I feel like all together, it's just showing how John thinks of his disfigurements as like how he sees it as like causing him so much pain from these abusers in his life, and how he's noticed maybe that there is a loss of humanity. You know, these men working in the factory, his mother screaming in terror. You know, there's something horrible happening. But like with any Lynch film, I think the more effective way to go about this is to just sort of feel these images rather than try to understand them or thoroughly explain them. So I thought that this sort of arrangement of images was pretty terrifying and very emotional. And I think you could argue they served as a reflection of how John Merrick sees himself, how this character sees himself. So yeah, that was an interesting part, a bit of a more abstract part in the film. Another thing that I wanted to discuss that I think really makes The Elephant Man a Lynch film is you have these two characters representing good and evil, paralleling one another. So obviously, John Merrick's character represents a pure good. He's just very well intentioned, well meaning. And then you have a character representing just evil in its purest form. And I would say that that character is the night guard. Um, I don't know what is his name listed as even. The night porter, played by Michael Elphick. I think that that character represents just pure evil. And then you have this character that's kind of caught in the middle. Anthony Hopkins' character, I think, is like the stand-in for Kyle MacLachlan's character in Blue Velvet, or Nicolas Cage's character in Wild at Heart. It's this character who is sort of curious about the world, who is driven by some sort of goal, which in and of itself is not harmful, but when put into action, it does harm people eventually. So it's this I guess well-meaning character that does end up hurting people in some way. And this sort of causes the character a crisis, which forces him to consider his standing in the world. Is he good? Is he bad? And he kind of looks to these forces of pure good and pure evil, and has to reflect and see how he can pursue the good. I think that this whole dynamic feels very Lynchian. I mean, even in Twin Peaks, you have like a pure good that is challenged by the evil, Laura Palmer. You have the pure evil, which is Bob and the killer. And then you have Cooper, who's caught in the middle and who has a run-in with Bob, but is also just like well-meaning, but he's been through so much, and Anthony Hopkins' character, Frederick, also has a quote in this film where he directly questions, am I a good man or am I a bad man? So I feel like this film was like a precursor to what would become a very long-running theme in Lynch's films. Obviously, this film, The Elephant Man, is incredibly emotional. Gonna be honest, I cried quite a bit. I think that this film did emotion really well, and I think that is thanks to all of the actors in this film just were incredibly believable, especially Sir John Hurt was really good. Anthony Hopkins always delivers. They were just great performances here that I think were able to capture the nuance and the intentions of these characters really well. Especially Anthony Hopkins, is this guy sort of fascinated by John Merrick at first in a way that is taking advantage of John Merrick. He uses John Merrick sort of just like as academic research at first, and he does that for most of the film and is forced to realize that that is also objectifying this man. And you can kind of see like the nuance in the character discovering that for himself. And obviously, Sir John Hurt, his performance in this was just spectacular. And what he did in order to effectively tell the story was great. And just like speaking through the prosthetics, I imagine, was its own challenge, and just the physicality of this performance. I don't even know where to begin. And I also really liked the nurse character. She really surprised me. What was her name? Wendy Hiller playing Motherhead, the head nurse. She started out, at first I thought she was just awful and mean and rude. But then she pointed out, like halfway through the film, she was like, what are you talking about? Like, I cared for him. I gave John Merrick a bath when he came in. I cared for him. I did what I was told. I've cared for him more than any of these people visiting have. And at first I was like, really, girl? I don't seem to remember that being true. Maybe I need to watch this tape back. But if I were like in one of the characters in the movie, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know if I believe you. I don't remember that. But roll the tapes, roll the tapes. So yeah, a lot of emotion in this film. I also, yeah, so I cried. Let's see. I cried when John Merrick went to visit Frederick's wife at home and they had tea together. And I think, yeah, Frederick's wife said, "Nice to meet you," to John Merrick. And he broke down in tears and said, "I'm not used to being treated so well by such a beautiful woman." Um, it's incredibly moving. And I think it really communicates this character to the audience and like, yeah, how this character would feel, what they would be going through. Um, that's when it kind of all hit me. And Frederick's wife, Mrs. Treves, also says, "No son as loving as you could be a disappointment," because John Merrick was talking about his mother, and I thought that was very moving as well. And then obviously the scene where all of the people go in his room and abuse him. That is moving in completely different ways. It is just horrific and terrible. And I just, yeah, that it was just terrible to watch that scene. It is just like one of those really low moments of the film. And then there's the scene later at the train station after John Merrick leaves the circus performers, the sideshow, for the second time, and he's in the train station by himself, and all those people start chasing him, and he gets cornered in a bathroom and says, "I'm not an animal, I'm a human being." That's like, feels like the log line of this movie. It is, I feel like, just the pivotal moment of this film. And I really like that line emphasizes the relationship between John Merrick and Frederick really well, and the effect that these two characters had on one another, where through John Merrick, Frederick was able to realize like how through his research he dehumanizes people, specifically John Merrick. And he was able to learn like how to care for someone as a doctor. And then through Frederick, John Merrick was able to realize his own humanity, I assume. We can kind of see this through like the images of reflection throughout the movie, and how like whenever John Merrick sees his reflection, he's very startled. So I don't know. It's like this moment of determination for John Merrick. It's a very beautiful moment of courage. I think that this film also explores the question really well of, what exactly is dehumanizing, and, what is objectifying in some ways, because, obviously John Merrick was dehumanized at the circus, but then he left, went to the hospital, was cared for, and then he was in a very public facing setting, and all of these members of like London high society, or whatever you want to call it, they were fascinated by him, and they wanted to have tea with him, and he was in the newspapers and all that sort of thing. So how much of like the how much of it was turned into a spectacle. It kind of reminded me of Nope in some ways. Very slightly similar themes, I think. It's like, how can spectacle be dehumanizing and objectifying and wrong? So I think it explored sort of that area really well. Yeah, all in all, I think that this film is timeless. I think this is a classic tale that, will always be true for a variety of reasons. Like I was saying earlier, from the like aspect of like machinery and technology, I think that that is like a really interesting way that this film has remained relevant. But also, like, of course, with human dignity and courage and empathy, I think that is something that the world always, always, always could use, especially, especially in the year 2025. We could use that. So everyone, go watch this movie. Yeah, yeah. I was really surprised by this movie. This was my first time watching it, and I watched it on the Internet Archive. So you can see this for free if you have access to the internet. And I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting like something really depressing and just kind of devastating. And this film, it was emotional. Like I said, it was kind of rough, but it was also this film was very heartwarming in some ways and fulfilling. And I just was completely captivated by this movie. I think it was incredibly well made. And I need to mention that it was just beautifully shot. This is just one of those films that was made to be black and white. I'm so glad that it was in black and white. And there's so many beautiful images here. Just classic like film school thing, like rule of thirds and the mise en scène, whatever. I don't want to talk about that on this podcast, but just a beautifully shot film. Yeah. And I have to note, this is another thing I found in my research. A completely new adaptation is on the way with Adam Pearson, who you might know from A Different Man and Under the Skin, slated to play the character of Merrick. This adaptation is not at all going to be related to this Lynch film. It is simply going to be a new adaptation of the true story of the Elephant Man. So very excited to see that. And I'm very excited to see an actor who actually has this condition play this role, and I'm really curious and interested to see what Adam Pearson is able to bring. I think that he is just a fantastic actor. Okay, everyone, I am going to give The Elephant Man a Nick pick. Of course. The Elephant Man is an undeniable classic for many reasons. Its story about the beauty and horrors of human nature, its stunning imagery and atmosphere, its captivating and convincing performances, and its completely devoted makeup effects, to name a few. While this is in many ways a Lynch film, it's the collection of completely devoted artists here that make this film a masterpiece. The Elephant Man is a captivating film that is able to speak on the human nature in a way that is loud, bold, beautiful, and timeless. I think that this is streaming on Paramount Plus, so go watch it there if you have not. But also, it is available on the Internet Archive, which you can just search it up using Google, and it will be there. So this is available to everyone to see. I encourage donating to the Internet Archive because it is a beautiful and lovely resource. But yeah, go watch this. I think this is just a film that everyone needs to see and that everyone can take something away from. Like I said, it's just a very human film, and one that is still relevant to this day in ways that people probably never expected. So I hope that through this discussion, I was able to kind of like offer something new with this movie. I know that this is a classic, and this is really like, if I'm talking to my parents about David Lynch, this is the one David Lynch film they know. They don't even know like Blue Velvet. They know Dune. They know all that. They've heard of Twin Peaks, of course, but like this is the David Lynch movie that is like a household name. So yeah, I hope that I was able to contribute something new to the conversation. And if not, I hope you just had a fun time spending some time with me today. If you are following along to Lynchian Picks, the next episode of this collection will cover the 1984 adaptation of Dune, starring Kyle MacLachlan, and it will be released 2 weeks from today, roughly Thursday, June 19th. This will be really interesting because this will be my first time ever reviewing a film for a second time, and of course it is Dune, 1984. I won't say I'm excited to watch this movie again, but I will watch it again. The things I do. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to Lynchian Picks on the Coffee House Patreon channel. Before you go, please consider becoming a regular of the Patreon Coffee House for only $3 a month, which will grant you bonus content on here and shoutouts on the main show. If you would like to stay up to date on the show, please follow @CoffeeNick's Movie Picks on Instagram and @CoffeeNick on Blue Sky. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, drop me a rating, and tell a friend about the show. It really, really helps. A special thank you to Nathan Moore for creating the show's opening and closing themes. Thank you again for being a part of the Coffee House, for joining me on this discussion, and I cannot wait to see you for the Dune discussion in 2 weeks. Until next time, I'll be playing on my Nintendo Switch 2. I'm so excited. I will see you then. Bye.